Digital editor Jack Houghton joining me as ever for a Thursday. We'll have a look at some of the feedback in a moment, Jack, but I have to show you and our viewers Johannes Leek's cartoon for The Australian tomorrow. It's to do with Malcolm Turnbull's book and The Guardian, as I talked about at the top of the program. And here you've got it. The kicker is the circle of trust. And you've got those two figures there. Those women are Laura Taylor and Catherine Murphy from The Guardian. And Malcolm Turnbull's going up to them and says, and here's a list of everyone I suspect of leaking. As he leaks them his list. It's delightful, isn't it?
He's a very talented cartoonist. This is really embarrassing for The Guardian. The way that I see it, you've got a man who had aspirations to become the leader of the country, who's handpicked two journalists, who's brokered the deal. They've actually, as you mentioned earlier, had to come out and write an article called Thanks But Not for Favours, because there's so many questions
But they've never mentioned it. Laura Taylor and Catherine have known about Turnbull's role from that piece, but they've never mentioned it. And they've never mentioned they were part of this secret Turnbull plan to get The Guardian up and running in Australia. Where's their declaration? Talk about media conspiracy.
And not only that, they even have a bit of a swipe at him the way he wrote it. They're saying, well, yeah, he definitely connected us, but he's taken far too much credit. I think the director quote was something that he's glazed over the overly complicated process.
There's a bit of self-serving this stuff. It's not as simple as that. After Malcolm Turnbull recommended us, we sort of had to negotiate.
We just wafted into the press gallery.
It's beautiful. As I said, this is green on green warfare, this one. This is delightful. Now, feedback to some of the big issues of the week. World Health Organisation has been a big yarn. We've done a lot on it in this program.
Yeah, well, you had a sensational editorial talking about Donald Trump. Obviously, now we know he's confirmed he's axed this $400 million.
Yep.
Some of the response to your editorial was, what a shame. Our own government refuses to do the same. They're still happy to waste our tax dollars on the World Health Organisation. What a complete letdown.
Yeah, a lot of people suggesting Australia should do the same. Scott Morrison talked about that today, actually. He's saying that they're examining what they're doing, but at the moment they support some of what the WHO does. Now, Matt Holly also sent us a Facebook response on this saying, so China gets the most positive bias from the WHO but pays the least. How does that work? It is amazing, isn't it? America funds all these organisations much more generously than other nations.
And I guess this is the argument against pulling out and having less influence over the World Health Organisation. There could be an argument to be made that you actually want to be in there to fight the good fight, because these countries...
But if you're $400 million...
it doesn't get you.
They still just kowtow to China. What's the point?
I'm with you. And I think the broader problem is, now that we know so much disinformation has been endorsed by these guys, you can't actually take what they say on face value anymore, and it leaves all this confusion. I think Tedros, at this stage he's got to go, and I think Australia really needs to ensure that happens before we give any more money.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's toast. Tanya Gibbons has responded on this story as well, and she makes a very good point here. Trump fooled around too much by the WHO. Regardless, he should have acted quicker. This is the point. Sure, Trump's criticism of the WHO is right. The WHO let down America and the rest of the world. But Trump is looking for a distraction from his own downplaying of this.
And he desperately needs one. Yeah. The situation has not been handled well from his perspective. I think even most of his diehard supporters have balked at some of the statements. I think with Donald Trump, you've got to separate his commentary from his actions.
Yep.
I think that the way that he has acted has kind of been in line with most Western leaders, but it really makes them very uncomfortable when he's out there and he's doing gaffe after gaffe. He's getting into arguments with people. It's very different the way, say, Scott Morrison has handled it. And I think a lot of people have been very, very impressed with the way that he's done it in such a calm manner.
Now, we're just about out of time. I wanted to mention the China censorship issue. Tim Blair's brilliant column with everything redacted. YF Chu said, wait a minute, you mean China edit, redact and censor news articles? Spot on, YF. It's brilliant. That stuff of Tim Blair's was just brilliant.
Well, how dare they think they could come into Australian media landscape and do what they do back home?
I would love to be in the Chinese embassy in the meetings where they're looking at Tim Blair's column and working out how to put this in a cable and explain it back to Beijing.
Yeah, and look, he's such a clever, witty writer as well. He's the last person you want to try and censor the column of. Of course, he's going to come back and do something like that.
Yeah, it's the easiest column he's ever written. Now, he said that himself, but it was a brilliant, brilliant idea.